You know, when we're trying to understand a really complex issue, whether it's in healthcare, education, you name it, we often feel like we have to make a choice. Do we go with the cold, hard numbers, or do we listen to the human stories? Well, what if I told you there's a powerful approach called mixed method research that says, hey, you don't have to choose. It's all about getting the best of both worlds to see the full picture.
So, yeah, what's it going to be? The massive scale you get with numbers, seeing these big trends play out, or the incredible depth you get from individual stories, the stuff that gives you that rich, detailed understanding. For the longest time, researchers kind of acted like these were two totally separate teams. But what if the real magic happens when you bring them together? Okay, think of it like you're a detective cracking a tough case. Your quantitative research, that's all your forensic evidence. It's the fingerprints, the stats, the data that tells you what happened on a broad scale. But the qualitative research, oh, that's you interviewing the witnesses. That gives you the motive, the context, the story that explains why it all went down in the first place.
All right, so to really get a handle on this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about why we need to move past that whole numbers versus stories fight. Then, we'll nail down a solid definition of what mixed method research actually is. We'll get into the why, like why it's worth the extra effort. Then, we'll lay out the blueprint for building your own study. And finally, we'll meet the 4 main designs you're going to see out in the real world.
Right, so let's officially put that old debate to bed. The big idea here isn't about picking a side. It's about building a bridge. It's about combining methods to create this single, panoramic view of a problem that's way, way clearer than a spreadsheet or a personal story could ever be on its own. Now, you hear the term mixed method thrown around a lot, so let's get specific. What does it really mean? How do you combine these two different ways of thinking so that it's actually rigorous and create something genuinely new? Here we go, a classic definition from Tishakari and Creswell, who are giants in this field. Now listen to those verbs: collect, analyze, but the most important one, the real secret sauce, is integrates. So you're not just stapling two different reports together. You are intentionally weaving the findings into one another to create an insight that wasn't there before. And hey, just a quick heads up on something that can be confusing. You might hear about multi-method research. That's different. That's when you use, say, 2 qualitative tools, like interviews in a case study. Mixed method is special because it crosses that huge divide, bringing the world of numbers and the world of stories together into one single project. This all brings up a pretty fair question. Why bother? I mean, running one good study is hard enough. Why would you do 2? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Because the insights you get can be so much more powerful, so much more credible, and way more useful. There are 5 big reasons. But let's talk about the superstar, triangulation. Let's go back to our detective. This is when the DNA evidence, the numbers, and the eyewitness testimony, the story, both point to the exact same suspect. It just makes your conclusions so much stronger. But you can also do things like use stories to clarify what the numbers mean, or maybe even find a contradiction that blows the whole case wide open. Okay, so you're sold. You want to do this. Where do you even begin? Well, it all starts with a blueprint, and that blueprint is built on 3 absolutely critical decisions you have to make right at the start. Decision number 1. Who's in the driver's seat? You've got to decide if one of your methods is going to be the main event with the other just playing a supporting role. Is this a giant survey that just happens to have a few interviews for some extra flavor? Or are both methods sharing the spotlight with equal status? This one choice changes your whole approach. Next up, you gotta think about timing. Are you going to run your number crunching and your story gathering at the exact same time? That's called a concurrent design. Or are you going to do them one after the other, in a sequential design? What you choose really depends on what you're trying to figure out. And the third decision, honestly, it's the most important one. Where do the 2 streams meet? This is the point of integration. It's the exact moment you bring the quantitative and qualitative data together. Will you compare the final results at the very end? Or will what you find in phase 1 actually change what you do in phase 2? This is where the magic happens. So those 3 big decisions, who's dominant, what's the timing, and where's the integration point? They are the basic building blocks for the 4 most common designs out there. So let's meet the big 4, using a really practical guide from the experts Creswell and Clark. First up, we've got the triangulation design. This is probably the most famous of the bunch. The main idea here is to get a second opinion on your findings. It's a single-phase design, which means you do both methods at the same time to see if they point to the same conclusion.
So the whole goal is to see if your survey results and your interview themes are singing the same tune. It's pretty efficient since you're collecting all your data at once. The biggest challenge? Figuring out what to do if your numbers and your stories actually contradict each other. Which, yeah, can be tricky, but it can also be the start of a brand new, fascinating discovery.
Next up, we have the embedded design. Okay, with this one type of data plays a smaller, supporting role inside a much bigger study. Think of it like a main movie plot that has a really important subplot that adds a ton of depth. You'd use this when one method just can't answer all your questions. Imagine you're running a huge clinical trial. That's your quantitative part. But you embed a few qualitative patient interviews to understand what the experience of being in that trial was actually like. The key is that the purpose of that smaller embedded part has to be crystal clear from the get-go.
Okay, our third approach, the explanatory design. This one's a two-phase deal, and the name tells you everything you need to know. The second phase explains the first, and with this design, you always start with the numbers.
So the flow is simple. Quan, then qual. You run your survey, you analyze the data, and maybe you find something totally unexpected. You get a result that makes you go, huh, what is going on there? So then you follow up with interviews to dig deeper and figure out the why behind those numbers. It's super intuitive, but you got to be careful about who you pick to interview for that second phase.
And finally, our fourth design is pretty much the mirror image of the last one. This is the exploratory design. It's also a two-phased approach, but this time you start with the qualitative data to explore a topic first.
Yep, the flow here is qual, then quan. This is your absolute go-to when you're walking into a topic and you don't even really know what the important things to measure are yet. You start by exploring with in-depth interviews, you pull out the key themes, and then you use those themes to build a brand new survey that you can use on a much bigger group of people.
So at the end of the day, mixed method research is so much more than just a buzzword. It's a way to get the best of both worlds. By tapping into the unique strengths of numbers and stories, we get a much richer, more complete, and frankly, more useful understanding of really tough problems, especially in areas like public health and education, where context is everything. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What about in your world, your job, your community, the big challenges you see out there? What complex problems are just waiting for a solution that you can only find by powerfully weaving together both numbers and stories?